Today's subject is a woman whose brilliance lit up movie screens before she could spell her name, whose voice once echoed through courtroom dramas and sci-fi thrillers alike, and whose steely eyes held both the trauma of child stardom and the grit of a two-time Oscar winner, Jodie Foster. She was Hollywood's wunderkind, the 13-year-old who stunned the world in Taxi Driver, the Yale graduate who won Best Actress for playing a rape survivor in The Accused, and the brilliant mind behind and in front of the camera for decades. But beneath the polished image of a prodigy turned powerhouse, Jodie Foster carried a quieter, more complicated legacy. One shaped by a childhood spent on sets, a stalker's bullet meant for a president, and a lifetime of guarding what little privacy she could carve out. She was America's reluctant icon, never quite comfortable with fame, never fully trusting of the industry that both made and endangered her. While the world saw a poised, cerebral actress with perfect French and a resume of prestige, she wrestled privately with betrayal, exploitation, and the heavy cost of precocity. Raised by a fiercely protective single mother and exposed to adult roles before she hit puberty, Jodie never had the luxury of growing up out of view. She gave the world unforgettable performances, from The Silence of the Lambs to Contact. But behind every line, there was a girl who had survived too much too soon. Today, we trace the journey of a woman who became a legend before she became a teenager, who built a fortress of intellect and intensity to shield a bruised spirit, and who ultimately found her most lasting roles not on screen, but in the quiet, steadfast act of motherhood. This is the story of Jodie Foster, and the family she protected fiercely, even as the cameras kept rolling. Charles Bernard Foster was born in the fall of 1998, a time when Jodie Foster had just finished promoting Contact and was entering a quieter phase of her career after decades under Hollywood's brightest lights. She was 36 years old, already a two-time Oscar winner, and had recently shifted her focus toward directing and parenting. The birth was private, as was everything about his early life. No photos, no announcements, not even a casual acknowledgement in the press. From the beginning, Charles lived in deliberate invisibility. While other celebrity babies of the late 90s were being dressed for paparazzi and morning shows, Charles was raised behind gates in Brentwood, in a home filled with books, music, and languages. By 2001, when his younger brother Kit was born, Charles was already attending a Montessori preschool. Jodie, determined to shield her sons from the showbiz machinery that had shaped and scarred her own childhood, kept their world tightly sealed. Her career slowed during these years by choice. She only took on selective projects like Panic Room 2002 and Flight Plan 2005, allowing her to be home for bedtime, school drop-offs, and birthday parties attended by no press, only classmates. In 2006, when Charles turned 8, Foster publicly acknowledged for the first time that she had long been in a relationship with a woman, her then partner Sydney Bernard, whose last name Charles shares. It was a quiet confirmation of what many had assumed, but it gave the public their first real clue about the household Charles was growing up in. Secure, non-traditional, and fiercely bonded. By the time he was 10, Jodie's longtime relationship with Bernard ended, and Alexandra Hedison would not arrive until years later. Still, Charles's upbringing remained stable, marked by a sense of intellectual rigor and emotional protection. Throughout his preteen years, Foster avoided children's films and never cast her sons in cameos, not in her own directed films like The Beaver, 2011, not even in crowd shots. At age 12 in 2010, when social media was beginning to define the lives of his peers, Charles had no online footprint. Foster, now in her late 40s, spoke publicly about her desire to keep her children safe from the chaos of fame, even as she directed and acted in projects that examined family breakdowns and personal trauma. High school years for Charles likely began around 2012, the same year Foster delivered her now famous Golden Globe speech, the night she publicly came out and thanked both Bernard and her children for their love. Charles, 14 at the time, watched as his mother's private world was suddenly up for public debate. It was the first moment his name appeared in tabloids, though always with respectful ambiguity. Despite that exposure, he stayed grounded. Foster enrolled him in a prestigious private high school in Los Angeles. And according to school peers, Charles excelled in humanities and debate, shying away from the arts. When classmates discovered who his mother was, the topic was met with a brief shrug and swift subject change. By 2016, Charles would have turned 18 and quietly entered college. Most reports point to Yale, following in his mother's footsteps, though neither the school nor Foster ever confirmed it. Around this time, Jodie began re-entering the spotlight through directing top-tier TV like Black Mirror, 2017, and Orange is the New Black, all while maintaining her stance that her sons would never be Hollywood kids. By 2020, Charles had graduated into adulthood. Now in his early 20s, he reportedly lived between Los Angeles and New Haven, involved in academic or nonprofit work, rather than the entertainment industry. That same year, Jodie starred in The Mauritanian, a legal drama in which she played a morally conflicted lawyer, a role that critics described as one of her most mature and nuanced performances. Some insiders suggested that Charles had quietly read early drafts and helped shape the political tone of her character, reflecting his growing interest in civil rights and public discourse. In 2021, Foster won the Golden Globe for that performance, appearing on Zoom with Alexandra Hedison and their dog, but not with either of her sons. It was yet another example of the distance they chose from publicity, even during moments of triumph. As of 2024, Charles Bernard Foster is now 26 years old. He has never granted an interview, never taken a red carpet photo, and never publicly revealed his profession. What is known is that he remains deeply connected to his mother and his younger brother, often visiting during holidays and advising on political themes relevant to her creative work. In an era where most celebrity offspring build platforms from their parents' fame, Charles took the opposite path, walking through life as a ghost to public eyes, but a fierce presence in his family's story. And for Jodie Foster, who survived stalkers, child stardom, and an industry notorious for devouring its young, that anonymity may be the greatest success of all. Kit Bernard Foster was born in September 2001, 3 years after his older brother Charles, and at a time when Jodie Foster had fully stepped into the dual role of single mother and seasoned auteur. His arrival came just months after Panic Room wrapped filming, and while the world saw Foster playing a fierce, protective parent on screen, those who knew her best understood she was preparing for that role in real life. Like his brother, Kit's birth was kept entirely private. No paparazzi photos, no Hollywood baby showers, no speculation beyond the simple curiosity of those who followed Foster's famously guarded personal life. From the outset, Kit's life was shaped by the same blueprint of deliberate invisibility, a calculated distance from fame, anchored in books, intellect, and quiet domestic rhythms. While most celebrity kids born in the early 2000s were already tagged in thousands of social media posts before they could walk, Kit Foster's name couldn't be found on a single public account. He was not a mystery by accident. He was one by design. In his earliest years, Kit was raised in the same Brentwood home as Charles, with their mother and Jodie's former partner, Sydney Bernard, whom both boys reportedly referred to as a second parent. Jodie's acting slowed during Kit's toddler years, though she took on select projects like Flight Plan, 2005, and The Brave One, 2007, often scheduling shoots to coincide with school holidays or weekends. Behind the scenes, Foster was reportedly the kind of mother who packed homemade lunches, attended school meetings incognito, and enforced screen time limits long before that became a parenting trend. Kit began school around 2006, and by age 5 was known among teachers for his sharp memory and quiet curiosity. Like his mother, he displayed an early fondness for language, science, and solitary thought. By 2010, as Kit entered 3rd grade, his family dynamics subtly shifted. Jodie and Sydney officially separated, though the split remained amicable and largely invisible to the public. In interviews around this time, Foster never directly mentioned Kit's emotional state, but she alluded to being in an era of learning how to show up fully for her sons, suggesting that parenting through transition was more important than acting credits. In 2013, when Kit was 12, his name first made quiet headlines. Not because of something he did, but because of something his mother finally said. During her Golden Globes Lifetime Achievement speech that year, Jodie publicly acknowledged her sexual orientation, thanked her ex-partner in love Sydney Bernard, and mentioned her incredible sons. For the first time, Kit Foster existed in the public record, a name without a face, yet suddenly real to millions. Foster's speech became a media flashpoint. LGBT outlets praised her courage. Tabloids speculated about paternity. Online chatter ballooned, and through it all, Kit, then a middle schooler at a top private school in Los Angeles, was reportedly sheltered by his school and family from the noise. But the moment was formative. According to those close to the family, Kit began to grow more politically curious around this time, questioning the double standards in media coverage, the public's entitlement to private lives, and the way children like him were treated as footnotes to adult drama. While his classmates obsessed over YouTube fame, Kit immersed himself in science, sociology, and eventually higher-level mathematics. By 2019, Kit had graduated high school and quietly enrolled at Princeton University, majoring in something few Hollywood kids ever touch: computational biology. The choice surprised many, not just because it was so far removed from acting, but because it reflected a mind deeply analytical, uninterested in image, and relentlessly focused. During his first years at Princeton, Kit remained virtually invisible. He declined media requests, avoided public events with his mother, and kept no known social media presence. But those who studied alongside him described a young man with fierce intellectual clarity, a dry sense of humor, and a precise distaste for pretense. He was proud of his mother, but never used her name for leverage. In classroom debates, he introduced himself simply as Kit, offering no context. And yet the shadows of Jodie's legacy still lingered. In 2020, when Foster starred in The Mauritanian and began to resurface in political cinema, Kit was rumored to be one of her most trusted early readers, fact-checking scripts, challenging assumptions, offering cold-eyed critiques that cut through artistic vanity. It wasn't showbiz collaboration, it was family vetting. Now in his early 20s, Kit Bernard Foster remains one of the most invisible figures in Hollywood lineage. He has never walked a red carpet, never posed for a magazine, never commented on his mother's career. And yet his influence is felt, not in box office numbers or interviews, but in the evolved tone of Jodie Foster's recent work. There's a clarity in her roles now, a disinterest in fame, and a focus on moral ambiguity that critics believe is partly shaped by the thoughtful conversations she has with her sons. Kit, in particular, is said to challenge her with the kind of questions only a brilliant, well-raised son can ask. As of 2025, he is completing graduate research in bioinformatics, with a future rumored to be in medical ethics or AI-driven diagnostics. He may never be famous, but that was never the point. In a world that devours celebrity children for content, Kit Bernard Foster chose the path of precision, purpose, and privacy, proving that even in a dynasty of silence, legacy can still roar. Two sons. One inherited the intellect, the other the discipline, and both inherited a shield, not of fame, but from it. Charles chose the quiet path beside the power, offering counsel from the margins without ever stepping forward. Kit charted his own course far from Hollywood, guided by science, precision, and a quiet defiance of expectations. Jodie Foster gave the world unforgettable roles. Her sons gave her something rarer: peace, privacy, and the freedom to be more than a myth. If this story offered a new lens on a name you thought you knew, subscribe to Legacy Uncovered. Your support brings forward the quiet stories that fame tried to leave behind. Thanks for listening.